And you're very welcome along to Thursday morning's OTB AM. I nearly got caught texting Johnny Ward for a tip because I see Laytown is on the front of the Racing Post today. Laytown is a racing event that I've never been to and I'm dying to go to and didn't get my stuff together to go to.
Is Laytown a place or is Laytown a play on words where you just lay all your bets and you don't actually bet on any horses?
That's why it's called Laytown, because they went there and everything, like, the bookies always won. So it was
so it is a play on words?
No, I'm joking.
No.
It's a beach. It's the beach races in County Meath, where it's one of the oldest tracks in the world, and it's also one of the few remaining tracks where they're on a real beach. I'm on a beach.
They're the best races though, aren't they? It's like, if your mind wanders off into the horizon, if the racing is boring, you can do that. Whereas on ordinary race courses, you just can't. You just kind of have to look down into your pint and just get on with life, really. So I think it's great. I think more background beauties in the background is what you need at racing events.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's actually not a bad days of sport. We have Ireland playing Wales tonight. I was trying to think about this, like what do I think is actually going to happen. I mean, I ordinarily, after what we've been through, scandal, horrific final competitive performance, that is actually the last thing that you really remember. Mick McCarthy, Keane coming back into the, ooh, look at this, what's happening here? And our two best players, our best player anyway, not playing. Harry Arter also not playing. I wasn't calling him one of our best players. And then you think, but they've got Ryan Giggs as their manager. Of course they're going to win this game. What was I thinking?
Why? Because we're going to have, like...
We've got Martin O'Neill and they've got Ryan Giggs. I mean, come on, it's Ryan Giggs.
Yeah, there's more pedigree there. But in terms of current capabilities, is Martin O'Neill... Is there a huge gulf between them as managers?
Yes!
Do you think so?
It's Ryan Giggs!
Well, it is Ryan Giggs.
Come on!
But Martin O'Neill hasn't exactly shown himself up to be a glorious manager over the past couple of years, has he?
Well, we beat Germany, we beat Wales away from home.
I'm saying in the last campaign, the
Wales campaign where we got to the playoffs by so we backed ourselves into a bit of a corner and then we won our way out by winning games.
Yeah, with a fair slice of luck, you would have to say. Like, I don't think we can kind of look at our own sideline as a point of strength over everybody else. But maybe against Ryan Giggs, I'll give you that.
There you go, that's all I need.
I wouldn't be overly happy with
the start of a new campaign. Every fan is allowed to be completely ridiculously gee-eyed with happiness and expectation at the start of a new campaign, even if it is a campaign that's ultimately kind of meaningless.
Yeah, you suspect...
I heard you were talking to McIntyre yesterday going, oh, it's grand, sure, if the two teams ahead of us qualify automatically, we'll get into a playoff. And he was like, that's not really how it works. And he's been studying it for an hour and a half, and you've been studying it for a year and a half, and nobody actually knows what the hell is going on tonight in the European Nations Cup.
I do know what's happening. It's to a certain extent.
No!
What you said, what I said to McIntyre yesterday is what's going to happen.
What?
If we come bottom of our Nations League group,
yes,
and Denmark and Wales do qualify, we do have a chance of making the playoffs via the Nations League. We just need a lot more teams in the second division, or Pool B as they say, to also qualify automatically. So basically we need to have a horrendous campaign on both fronts for us not to be involved in either the playoffs or automatic qualification for Euro 2020.
But there's no third place qualifiers from the actual groups which happen after this,
no.
Which is how we traditionally qualify these days.
Yes, but there will be a fair share of Pool B teams that qualify in the top two of those groups anyway.
Okay, and so what happens then?
So what happens then is it will go down to... So, say for example, if Ireland finish in the top two in their qualifying group...
Great radio here, go on.
Well, it's not radio.
Ireland finish in the great... It is radio, it's internet radio.
So if Ireland finish in the top two in their qualifying group, they qualify automatically, and they happen to finish top of their Nations League group.
Can you give me a realistic scenario here, Owen?
Then the next ranked team... So if you flip that, and Ireland doesn't qualify in the top two of their Nations League, then they will need to be within one of the top ranked... need to be one of the top ranked sides in Pool B to get into a playoff. Now that may happen automatically, the playoff place, by actually topping this group. Winning tonight would be a good first step to that. What?
I didn't understand a word of that. I'm sorry, you lost me. Like, Tommy was rabbiting in my ear that if we finish third, we're screwed for the next two qualifying groups as well, because we will be.
Well, yeah, we get relegated to Pool C.
Yeah,
and future rankings are affected.
But actually, that's not necessarily true either, because in the next group of nations, we'll be in Pool C, which will be easier than the one that we're in at the moment, or whatever. We'll be in.
Yeah.
So you can't qualify automatically from.
No, you can't qualify automatically from the Nations League. Full stop.
Grand. So you get into a playoff.
Yes.
Against.
against the people in your own pool. So there is a semi-final, one-legged semi-final, and then a one-legged final, and the winner of that.
And that's after
series.
the qualified campaign has failed.
Yes.
So you fail here, you fail there, and then you get into.
And then you succeed.
You accidentally get into a one-legged playoff semi-final and one-legged playoff final.
Yeah.
To win 2 games.
Well, you know,
it's the greatest system of all time.
But you're talking about Euro 2024 at that point, because you're talking about Pool C after Ireland get relegated in this. But ultimately, we're not going to win this thing because of what happens this weekend. And like we have it on a back of a few of the papers this morning, that it is ridiculous that Wales get to play Denmark, this crap Denmark team this weekend.
We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. I'm going to tell you what's coming up. Alan Quinlan's going to talk to us about rugby. A couple of stories bubbling away in the background ahead of this weekend's Pro 14 matches. We're also going to talk about the return of the NFL. The Vince Lombardi trophies on the back of a couple of the newspapers, because tonight the Atlanta Falcons are at the Super Bowl champions Philadelphia Eagles. It's actually tomorrow morning our time, but you know what I mean. It's Thursday Night Football and it's back. We're going to talk Ireland-Wales, and Sam Curtis is a paddler.
He is. He's one of our hopefuls for the next Olympics. He's got a World Cup event this weekend. Huge events now over the next few months. In and around the next 8 months, he's going to be basing himself in northern Spain, where the final qualifications for the Olympics take place. So it's one of those sports at the moment. All the kayaker is kind of at a position where they need to get government funding, but the only way you're going to get government funding is by actually succeeding without your funding and proving yourself, much like the women's hockey team. So hopefully he succeeds. He's got a great story, really good talker, so we're going to play out that interview a little bit later on.
All right, it's time for the papers.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie. Championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
Okay, so let us start with the front page of the Irish Examiner, which is none other than Big Mick giving some managerial advice to Roy Keane. O'Neill must invite Arthur back, just like I did Roy, says McCarthy. So this is interesting. He invited Roy Keane back. There was talk about an olive branch being extended by Mick McCarthy in the middle of the 2002 situation. Do you want to talk about Saipan again?
Well,
have you had enough of Saipan?
Not really, if there's new information coming to light.
Is it kind of like JFK at this point for you? You're like, give me all of the JFK, smear me that stuff on. Is that what you're one of those guys?
I've had enough of where were you when Saipan happened, or who was in the right and who was in the wrong. I'm all for new nuggets, and there are nuggets that have yet to be polished, many of which are contained in some of the things that Mick McCarthy said yesterday. And when I say many, I mean 1 or 2 things. Yeah,
so it's worth digging out the interview that Joe did with him last night. The podcast is up for you to download, offtheball.com/podcasts. Is actually the best and handiest and easiest place for us all to access our podcast. But if you get them somewhere else, then you can subscribe to our football stuff and you'll get it there. Anyway, yeah, so McCarthy, O'Neill must reach out to Arthur like I did to Roy. Everybody's going to scream, hold on, what about the 2002 World Cup when you sent Roy Keane home? But I did invite him back. The offer was there. That was me realising that it was almost like the weight of the people that wanted him back. I had to offer that olive branch. I don't want to be bringing my case up again because it was all dragged out again during the summer when the World Cup came around. Blah, blah, blah. It was bullshit. But I'm just going to bring this bit up. And I'm just accidentally going to bring the bit up that he brings up with Joe, where it's like, I couldn't really understand what he was saying. He says there's a line where Joe's talking about Harry Arthur and John Walters and the altercation, and Johnny Walters is on the treatment table, and Big Mick just goes, yeah, you wouldn't want to accuse somebody of faking injury. And there's a pause. And then he says something else which I can't quite make out. I just can't, about having the right to or not having the right to. And I'm just not sure what he was trying to get at. And then he kind of sits back and there's this stony-faced silence. And then, I don't know. I don't know.
He's almost like the gatekeeper to a magical cave where you have to say the correct password to actually get into his cave and find out the secrets of Saipan 2002. He's very mystical about it. He's almost like just leading you down the garden path a little bit, and then it's like, that's it, giving you no more. And that's sort of what happened with Joe last night.
You're talking about Mick McCarthy's cave of enchantment, are you?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. That is it. All the secrets that have yet to be there.
Cave of enchantment was a phrase that was used in the Times last week for the very first time ever as a phrase to mean a,
Something that, well, no, I definitely did not mean that then.
It was this week's Netflix and chill. Anyway, so Mulligan, Johnny Ramos is Dublin's match winner.
What? Johnny who? Is he talking about Johnny Cooper, making a comparison to Sergio Ramos?
It's in all the papers today. Oh, Mulligan obviously did an interview or something, and
didn't we make that exact comparison?
so what date are we at here? We're at Thursday, the 6th of September. On the 10th of June, this man said this.
Kind of on the malice point, like I've made a Sergio Ramos comparison earlier on, and I don't think the comparison just stops with how he got refereed or anything like that. I think you could almost make a very direct comparison to what happened with Mo Salah in the Champions League final, that the consequence does not have to match what the defender was trying to do. You can't say Sergio Ramos was trying to kill Mo Salah and end his dreams of appearing in the World Cup. The same could be said of Johnny Cooper. He wanted to make a hard challenge on the player. He didn't intend to hit him in the face.
He just wanted to win the ball. Like, he didn't go out to do anyone. He didn't go out to do any damage. The ball is there. That. He actually touches the ball. There's an issue about whether or not the fist is closed or open. But yeah, he has to make the tackle. What else can the defender do?
Darren's face as you were like making the Sergio Ramos comparison was actually, it was worth bringing that back up again. But also because he's just stole your joke.
What the hell? Like, I would have thought that Eoin Mulligan was a big fan of OTB AM, or maybe he is, and maybe he's like 3 months is the appropriate time for that joke to completely fade out of the public consciousness, and I can recycle it.
Yeah. So,
I can't wait to pick up the Backpage in 3 months' time and see Eoin Mulligan describes Mick McCarthy's secrets as Cave of Enchantment.
I really hope he does. That would be amazing. But I just think that, you know, he's obviously clearly in your black book now.
Oh, without question. Like, he, of course, a Tyrone man used to never be in my black books, but for the first time ever, I've started to take a dislike to a Tyrone man. Plagiarism is not cool, Owen.
The Kerry-Tyrone beef is back, finally. Okay, so sorry. Cody set to continue as Cat's boss for 21st season as the Backpage headline on the Irish Independent today. Evergreen Kilkenny chief closes on Boylan record as skipper Buckley faces time-out. Elsewhere, Pádraig Fanning is expected to succeed Derek McGrath as Waterford hurling manager, with Tony Brown and James Murray part of his backroom team, and Kevin Martin will continue as the Offaly boss. The news is coming thick and fast at the moment about managerial changes. We didn't know yesterday, this time for example, that Kevin McStay was going as the Roscommon manager. He is going, but he got a pretty interesting exit statement from McStay when he was just talking about the lack of money and how much time he as the manager had to spend on facilities and gear and just getting everything up to a standard where you can say we're an elite group and we're spending the same as everybody else to give ourselves the opportunity. Now, maybe the arms race is wrong, but if you're the manager of an inter-county team, you have no choice but to embrace the arms race and say, well, we have to do this because everybody else is doing it, and that's the situation they find themselves in. It's a small county with a limited playing pool and deficits in resources and facilities. He also challenged Croke Park to recognise the big challenges smaller counties face. If the GAA is committed to ensuring that all counties are at a minimum competitive, they must be supported financially in a way that reflects the demands and the need for fairness, equity and solidarity. And I think this is the big tension within the organisation. Is it right that the GAA centrally would allocate cash to pay for the resources for the senior inter-county teams? Now remember, the senior inter-county teams are like massive drivers of revenue in terms of ticket sales and TV rights and sponsorship. So they're three absolute pillars, all driven by the success of the inter-county game. And yet we have a massively lopsided inter-county game where the Dubs win everything all the time. So do you give Roscommon every year £500,000 and give every county £500,000 so they have top of the range strength and conditioning, sports psychology, stats packs analysis, nutrition, the same advantages? Or do you say, well, look lads, off you go and fundraise for yourselves?
Well, the thing would have to be, do you trust the county boards to invest in the right areas?
Well, no is the answer to that, I guess.
Well, clearly, so
you could administer it centrally from Croke Park. Like, apparently there was a plan at one stage to pay for strength and conditioning coaches for all of the counties, and so they would be kind of centrally employed by the provincial councils, for example, and the counties were like, nah, I think we're happy enough. You know, because there's a lot of bandits out there. Like, there's a lot of brilliant strength and conditioning coaches in Ireland, and the standard is obviously raised massively. But there are a lot of bandits out there who are like showing up with very questionable levels of qualification, who are getting big jobs and getting massive money, which is all ultimately paid for by GAA fans, supporters, and the county boards. All right, so Sports Thursday in the front of the Irish Times this morning. Plot is thick, but a point will please O'Neill and Ireland. Well, if ever we needed a boring draw, if ever you wanted a 0-0 or a 1-1 draw, the Republic of Ireland are your team.
Yeah, well, certainly on this occasion, Ireland will probably score 0 goals tonight, which is as more definite as you can possibly be, even in the context of Republic of Ireland over the past couple of years. Will Wales score is the only question. Well, I don't know. Like, Ireland have an all-Premier League back four, which is something that I guess we can stand over and be very proud of at the moment. That all-Premier League backline. One would almost suggest that Ireland should shift to back five and just shoehorn another Premier League player in there, because that seems to be our only selection of Premier League players at the moment. Jeff Hendrick, of course, the only other Premier League player outside of the back four that's set to start tonight. So yeah, it could be a very depressing watch, but is it going to be one of those depressing watches that we suddenly grow into the rules of the Nations League become more apparent? 70 minutes, it's still 0-0, and it's like, that's a good point. I don't know.
It's the Railway Cup. It's the Railway Cup.
How is it the Railway Cup?
That's what it is. It's the Railway Cup.
It's nowhere comparable to
ultimately
the Railway
meaningless.
Cup. The Railway, we're not like teaming up with other teams from our continent to form a super team.
I'm going back to Mick McCarthy, Mary Hannigan today. Roy and myself had one of the biggest falling outs ever. I offered an olive branch and asked him to come back. I was much more of a mediator through it all than I was ever given credit for. What happens now with Harry, I don't know. There's a little bit of revisionism going on here. I was much more of a mediator through it all than I was ever given credit for. Was he? Back in 2002, in the midst of it all?
Well, the thing, Mick McCarthy sensed a real opportunity here, because when was the last time Roy
was at his lowest? Keane's at his lowest ebb. He's, look, I've got a fancy new contract. I'm going to be a pundit on TV all the time. Jesus, I hope we can do Ireland games. Well, that team is set up really stupid, isn't it?
That's the thing. When was the last time Roy spoke about Saipan? Was it his last book?
No, he did an interview with ITV podcast during the summer, remember?
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, certainly Mick McCarthy's got far more opportunity to twist the knife a little bit when it comes to Roy Keane. Roy Keane is working in football, and Mick McCarthy is without a managerial role at the moment. For now, he should just keep drip feeding the media with little pieces of information. I quite admire his idea there that himself and Roy Keane had the biggest falling out ever, or one of the biggest falling outs ever. Like, I wouldn't necessarily constitute kind of a grudge between two football men as one of the biggest falling outs ever. There's been wars waged over bigger falling outs, I would suspect.
No. I mean, that was like the biggest falling out in Irish sport ever.
Well, it was, but I mean, he said general biggest falling out.
Come on, you're being pedantic.
Yeah, I am, but like you've got to be a bit of a pedant when it comes to these sort of things, no?
Was Lopetegui a bigger story? No, it actually wasn't. I mean, it really wasn't. They just got on with it. It was like, yeah,
it was less sensational.
Revenge is sweet. Gareth Bale. I mean, my point about it, you look at the sideline and it's Martin O'Neill versus Ryan Giggs, and then you look at the pitch and it's like Gareth Bale versus Ireland.
Yeah.
It softens my cough a little bit. Wales can make boys in green pay for World Cup heartache. They don't have a price on Wales to win. We have an enhanced special for our users. 5-1 if you go through offtheball.com/boilsports. If you think Ireland are going to nick it tonight, 5-1, enhanced from 7-2. O'Brien aiming to queue up a St. Ledger double. So Kew Gardens and Flag of Honour can kickstart a strong autumn for Aidan O'Brien, and they're his St. Ledger favourites, with Ireland's perennial champion trainer targeting victory in the final two classics of the season next weekend.
I've just been even in the box there, really annoyed with your Railway Cup comparison.
Yeah.
We just need to kind of revisit this for just a moment, because
we do the Irish news first.
It's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard.
World-class Coleman would have delivered World Cup spot, says O'Neill. I mean, it's putting a lot on his shoulders. McStay's Roscommon exit fuels Mayo rumours. I mean, he did say he was retiring from intercounty football management in his thing. He was like, that was it, I'm done, I'm out, I'm going back to the Sunday game, thanks very much. It's much easier.
It's a strange, I've never seen somebody like definitively say that they're finished with intercounty football. He might regret that in a few years' time, when he's like, actually, was it really so bad? Despite the fact that it was probably a horrible experience on a number of counts. But I've never seen someone do that. Also, the amount of words in the statement.
It was long. Too long, didn't read.
It was like a Leaving Cert essay. I was gonna just like pick back up the Railway Cup point there, but like, should we just leave that? Should we just leave that?
I think everybody knows what I'm getting at. Again, you're just being pedantic.
You're not really. Nobody knows what you're getting
like
at.
For like. It's like here's this thing which is like we needed to. Anyway,
What?
Maybe it's more like the international rules then. Let's invent this thing.
But it's not a hybrid sport.
It doesn't have to be. It's like an occasion that everybody's like pretending to go along, enjoy and go, oh, this is really interesting. Why are we all here again? What's going on?
Back page of the Herald this morning, I think this is so utterly ridiculous, is O'Neill calls foul. Ireland boss Bourne's Danish row could lead to farce. And Muggsy hails Johnny Ramos. Great line there. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail is, we need Harry. Don't let Arthur slip out of sight, says McCarthy. And we'd welcome Rice with open arms. Ready, says John Walters. Seamus Coleman actually with that quote, saying they'd welcome Rice back with open arms. He's coming back, Declan Rice. Like, I'm highly, it's been a great, let's say, 48 hours for those people who really want Declan Rice back, because I think it's happening. The sounds of the camp are really positive.
He's being love bombed by a group of people who think they can influence the situation, when really, like, if I offered you £1 million not to do something, would you do it?
Yes.
Right. So, rumour has it Declan Rice is like turning his back on a million/millions to play for Ireland.
Yes, rumour has it.
And to play under the current management setup, which apparently he has an issue with, allegedly, and also isn't the country of his birth.
Yeah.
But you think he's going to turn his back on the money? I mean, it would be heroic if he did. It would be like...
The money's not guaranteed. If you wrote down a €1 million cheque, I'm like, well, the money's literally right there.
The money's like not guaranteed. Obviously, it's sport. He could break his leg. He could completely lose form, and so therefore he won't get any of it.
Not progress to the point where he's considered good enough to play for England.
Yeah, but it almost like as an English player in the Premier League, he has value, especially in a post-Brexit world. Who knows what the hell that extra intrinsic value might be? So you're clearly turning your back on opportunity to do this. And if he does that, then it is absolutely one of the most heroic decisions that a sportsman has ever had to make.
Come on. One of the most heroic decisions a sportsman's ever had to make.
Yeah, it's like turning your back on loads of money.
Like, is it more heroic than Muhammad Ali turning his back on the draft and turning
an Irish sportsman.
An Irish sportsman. Well, you've narrowed it down substantially, at least with that line. But like, he's still a professional footballer. He's going to be rich playing for a Premier League club. He doesn't necessarily need the extra endorsements, the extra money. Of course, it's extra. I don't disagree with you on that. If he plays for England,
way more. Like, it is. Like, all joking aside, it is absolutely way more money. There's no way he ever gets transferred for like 50, 60, 70 million if he plays for Ireland. There's an outside chance that if he makes it to the England team, that's the value of a centre-back who can also step into midfield. Like, he could be a Man City player if he plays for England. He could still be a Man City player if he's really brilliant, right? He probably isn't good enough to be at that level, but let's just say he was. The difference between being an Irish Man City player and an English Man City player is a factor of 20 to 40 to 60 million over your career at this point. That's a lot of money to turn your back on.
Could be, but like, that is all under the premise that he is a starter in the England team, is a regular in the England team. Like, he could get to the level of someone like Nathan Redmond and fade out of the England team. There's also this story, by the way, on the back of the Irish Daily Mail. Defiant Bjorn stands up for his Ryder veterans. There's a lot of controversy around these European picks. He says it's more important to have the best team rather than the best players. That's obviously in relation to picking Sergio Garcia, who did not make one single cut in any of the majors in this year's golf season. So I would suggest that the better team probably doesn't involve a player who hasn't made a cut.
I think America are like 6-5 on at this stage. Is that not like the greatest bet of all time? Are they not going to hammer Europe?
Yeah, it seems that way. Like, there's been a lot of misplaced confidence, it seems, in the European team, especially from the Golf Weekly nerds over the past couple of weeks, saying this is actually a good team. Russell Knox will actually be a good player. Well, if Russell Knox was included in the team, I still wouldn't back him over any of the other Americans.
One quick tweet to get to. Paddy K. Are we going to see a Nike sacrifice everything for something you believe in poster with Kevin McStay's face on it?
Backpage.
Hey, do you want picking up in the morning?
What?
That was the best one.
Yeah. Backpage of the Mirror is sorted out. O'Neill fears Danish civil war could end up making Nations League a total farce. He kind of has a point. And sorted out number 2 here is Mick McCarthy on Harry Arter and saying that should be sorted out very, very quickly. Backpage of...
Does he not have a bit of cheek, though, Mick McCarthy?
In what way?
Sort out this managerial issue with the players. I assumed he would have come out and gone, here, I back the manager all the way. You just have to, because that's your job. Like, as opposed to sort it out, bring him back, put the olive branch out. What?
Well, you could point to his own former situations. Maybe he's learned from making wrong decisions and is now delivering his expertise to Martin O'Neill based on that. Backpage of the Irish Daily Star is something rotten in the state of Denmark. O'Neill wants UEFA to end unfairness. And the backpage of the Guardian finally is experience tips balance. Bjorn stands by out-of-form Garcia as a Ryder Cup wildcard.
All right, where should Joey Carberry play? Keith Wood thinks there's one spot and one spot only. Have a look.
Joey Carberry came off the bench on 53 minutes, showed a few glimpses. I think he put someone in for a try anyway. There was a nice skip pass, and I guess it's nice for him to get settled and get his feet in the ground and acclimatise and get used to a red jersey and all that kind of stuff.
Look, I just want to see him play 10 and 10 and 10 and 10 because we need him for Munster, but we need him for Ireland. You know, you need to have those options. He has got unbelievable feet, and a lot of that gets kind of missed sometimes by the fans, but he puts himself into space and other players into space because they have no idea whether he's going left or right, and that's something that's really, really good. He does see things pretty early, and he has got serious gas. So even if it isn't over 50 yards, it's the gas over that 3, 4, 5 metres that you know puts defences under a huge amount of pressure. It was a really good cut-out pass. Sweetenham got his hand to touch it. He was wondering whether it was for him or not. By touching it, he got absolutely smashed by the defender. But it was a cracking pass, cracking score. He had a beautiful kick into touch, and he did those things that you kind of want to see guys doing. Yeah, let's not just kick it in, let's kick it right into the corner. I mean, it was about a metre from the line. Look, there was a good reaction from the crowd. He'll have much sterner tests ahead, but I have to say it was kind of nice to see him in a Munster jersey, much and all as I know that might upset people.
Alan Quinlan, good morning to you. How you doing?
Morning, Ger.
So it's not a bad weekend.
Of course.
Not a bad weekend of Pro 14 action, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But before we do, one of your former teammates is now in the hot seat at Leicester, and it looks like he is to the manner born. There'd been speculation that maybe he was going to get a job outside the club in recent seasons. That
he was linked to Cardiff last season, and
that almost felt like he was kind of forcing the club's hand a bit. So they created this hybrid role for him, and look, I don't know, hybrid roles in rugby tend not to work that well that often, and lo and behold, Matt Connor gets one game to prove himself, which to my mind makes Leicester one of the worst run clubs in the world.
Like, that was in the back of last season, though. I think there was a lot of frustration there last year.
No?
Yeah, I think they...
Be fair,
yeah,
he would have had the whole last season himself to get a job.
Yeah, it's very strange that they sacked him kind of one game in. It's on the back of a big defeat away to Exeter, who were very, very powerful, but I think there was probably an expectation that Leicester would hit the ground running way better this year. You look at some of the players they have, Tuilangi's back playing, Matt Tamu in the centre, Johnny May, George Ford, Ben Youngs. That back line is very, very potent and dangerous. Probably up front is where the issues are. They don't have any huge household names, Tom Youngs, Dan Cole, but other than that, there's no big names sticking out.
Did Jordan Murphy strike you as a head coach in waiting when you were playing with him?
I'm not sure he struck me as a head coach, but he was very, very intelligent and very vocal for a young player. Even when I was in there, and when he was younger in the Irish squad, he was always very vocal and very intelligent around ways to attack, and quite vocal when you're going against one team and you're on his side or whatever. So. Look, he's obviously a Leicester stalwart.
Can I ask you, did that go down well with your buddies in the Munster and Ireland pack as like this scrawny teenager who's in England playing rugby, shouting at us?
And we used to slag him about his posh voice. Being from
everybody from Kildare sounds like that. What are you talking about?
Yeah, so we always like John Hayes used to give him an awful time about the posh voice and the marbles in the mouth. But he enjoyed it. Jordan was great fun. Always a very popular member of the squad. Got on really well with everyone. So it's not a surprise. Yeah, except the coach Eddie at the time. So it's not a surprise that he was always big into his skills and really naturally gifted as well. It's a big job, big boots to fill there. He's gone in as interim coach. Will they go for somebody else? Will he stay there? If he gets a couple of results, suddenly he's the saviour. But it's a club with so much tradition, history, and it hasn't been great in the last couple of seasons. You look at Munster last year, going over there, beating them, walloping them in Tomar Park. not getting out of the group again for Europe and stuff like that, and they finished 5th in the Premiership. So it's probably it's not good enough for a club of that size. Internally, they're probably the board look and say this is not good enough for a club of our history, and so it's a bit of a mess. And
that's the best time to be going into a place, though, right?
Yeah, so it can only get better. So if there's a couple of results go bad from the next couple of weeks, well, they'll say it's a bit of time, and it's kind of like. But if he gets some good results, they play Newcastle this weekend. It's ironic, an old Leicester stalwart, Dean Richards, is going to Newcastle for Jordan Murphy's first game. But there's a number of people being linked with the job, and one of those was Ronan O'Gara. He seems to be linked with a lot of jobs now. He's linked with the Scarlets job as well. A couple of jobs in France, but he's gone back to New Zealand for another Super Rugby campaign. But it'll be interesting to see how Jordan goes. He's a top bloke. Does
the Super Rugby campaign finish just ahead of the next World Cup? Is that one?
It finishes next August again, yeah. So it'll be January to August, and so I think when Ronan comes back, then he's in high demand now. I think so. If he has a good campaign again, it'll only enhance his reputation. But there's a lot of Irish coaching abroad now, and Jordan.
I was just about to say, like, it's almost becoming a template at this point for success.
Yeah, and I think it's the downside for Jordan is he's never had a head coach job outside of Leicester, and that's where I think Ronan has been in that position to go to Paris now, then to go to the Crusaders, where he's kind of building up that experience and probably waiting for the right job. There's for and against there that you might miss an opportunity and you have to take a chance somewhere. So it could work out perfect for Jordan to take that job. He knows the club inside out. But there is a lot of Irish guys. We spoke about Mike Prendergast, Paul O'Connell, Bernard Jackman, Mark McCall, David Humphreys is Johnny Beller in Gloucester.
All of a sudden we've got loads.
Afraid I'm leaving out someone, I probably am. Dennis Fogarty's coaching down in France as well. There's probably more. Can you think of more?
Is it like merely just exposure? Is it kind of like different rugby cultures? I wonder, because it seems that the way Murphy is thought of, like just reading, I think it was like just comments in The Guardian earlier on this week or something, it's just, he's so highly thought of, whereas you can't suspect that anybody who's coaching within the Irish setup with Munster or Leinster or whatever would get that same level of respect. It's probably just exposure, is it? And like
it probably is, yeah. And look, he's highly thought of as a player, but you got to prove yourself as a coach as well. We have a very, very pressurised environment here. You succeed or fail very quickly, and it can actually damage your reputation more to fail here in Ireland with the 4 provinces. If you don't do well, you're kind of probably cast aside. Les Kiss, Declan Kidney, and London Irish. Look at Eddie O'Sullivan as well. We cast our coaches aside who've had success and have proven track records. So we're very critical at times, and it's unfair, I think. Declan Kidney won a Grand Slam, 2 European Cups. Would he struggle to get he struggled to get a job here with one of the provinces if he wanted it, and you look at Eddie O'Sullivan, his success with Ireland. So Les Kiss is kind of tainted after the Ulster thing, after being involved in a Grand Slam with Ireland. So I think it's unfair in a sense, but it's probably because it's smaller and there's less opportunities. You can jump around in France to different clubs. You have a bad season with one team, you get the sack, you could head coach job in another club very quickly.
You've got to leg it, we know, but just very briefly, we talked a good bit of detail about Conor Murray on Monday. Munster have kind of come out with a holding statement that's like, none of your business, stop asking us questions. It's going to be a while probably before we see him, and that's the right thing. Yeah,
I think we mentioned this, and I think the reason is because they don't want to kind of pin themselves down to he's going to be 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever. And you see him, the pictures on the paper this week of him running around the training. So if he's in serious trouble, and I think it's more of a rest kind of recovery scenario to heal a niggling neck injury. He got an injection there, and it's just stay out of contact for a couple of weeks. So I think the signs are good. I was delighted to see him run around in training. So Jaco Taute is back as well from against Glasgow tomorrow night. And
suddenly there's depth everywhere.
Yeah, they have depth. They're waiting on Chris Farrell to come back. And look, it's going to be that's a really tough one for Munster going to Glasgow. Ulster at home to Edinburgh. They probably get their second win, which they badly need for confidence.
Jordy Murphy's playing that one as well.
Yeah, exactly. Jordy Murphy's back. Connacht at home to Zebra.
They need to win.
Yeah, and I think Leinster's second string We'll have a tough game over in Scarlets.
Yeah.
They had a great win there last week and certainly kind of ruffled a few feathers because some of the Welsh press were giving out about them bringing an under-strength side.
There's nothing better than the sound of whining from Wales, is there?
To go over and beat them, then, you know what I mean? It just shows that the depth in Leinster, so that's a tough one for them.
Good stuff. Thanks a million, Alan, with us across the season here on OTB AM. Now, here's a clip from our interview with OC Umanura from our new NFL show. Episode 2 is live ahead of the kick-off tonight. You were born in London, moved to Nigeria, moved to Auburn, and ultimately it's an incredible story to reach the pinnacle of the sport the way you did. What's the cultural shock like for a 6 or 7 year old boy moving from London to Nigeria?
Well, that was interesting. You know, when I left Nigeria, when I left England, I had a really strong Cockney accent, and imagine a little guy speaking with a Cockney accent in the heart of Nigeria. So they beat that right out of me immediately as soon as I got there. So it was strange, but I adjusted because my parents obviously were Nigerian, and they kind of raised me in the Nigerian way, if you know what that means. And everything was it was a little strange initially, but I adjusted really quick. I think that the bigger adjustment was when I moved from Nigeria to Auburn, Alabama. That was strange.
What was that like? Because it's such a specifically, in our mind anyway, a place associated with football. Was the intention to go there for football? Had you already kind of shown any athletic prowess at that stage, or why pick Auburn?
Well, my sister was actually going to school at Tuskegee University, which is maybe 15 minutes away from Auburn. And Auburn High School is the better high school, so they wanted me to attend school there. But, you know, everything was just strictly education. That was what my parents sent me to America for, was to get an education. It had nothing to do with football. And I noticed when I got there that the football players seemed to be having all the fun. And, they just seemed to be the guys. And, because I was new and, I kind of wanted to make more friends and be associated with something, I decided to go out there and give it a try.
Yeah, OC Umanura speaking to us on our new NFL show, brought to you in association with Subway, who are, of course, proud partners of the London NFL Games. We're going to talk about the London NFL Games a little bit later on with Mike Carlson as well. Just that whole sense of a massive marketing push ongoing at the moment from the NFL. It's pretty interesting. Like, it's a concerted, sustained effort. The games are over a very corralled period of time. Obviously, they've signed that long-term deal with Spurs. Shad Khan is trying to buy Wembley and getting there. But
it's almost as if we're going to have the London Jaguars in no time at all.
Yeah.
Like next 5 years.
The Minister for Sport was like, yeah, we want the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Anyway, even looking at some of the other stories.
Well, yeah, anybody who's big into the NFL, these are kind of like the big teams kind of dominating proceedings in the lead up to the NFL kickoff tonight. So the first one really, and I guess it's just a big LOL to anybody who drafted him in your fantasy team. It is Le'Veon Bell not showing up for Steelers practice. He's been hit with the franchise tag once again. I say hit with the franchise tag because there are positives and negatives. So that we might get Michael's take on that in just a moment. But as you can imagine, Steelers fans, not just fantasy football owners, are very, very unhappy at this. Take a look at this Steelers fan.
I understand, okay? He got to eat too. He got a family. I get it. But at the end of the day, really, you can't take it with you, Le'Veon. If you don't show up, who cares? We'll do it without. It's the Steelers. We create the talent. We made you who you are. We made you what you're worth. End the story.
It seems his offensive line teammates agree.
Yes, Raymond Foster. Let's have a look at some of the stuff he was saying. Here are his quotes. So Ed Bouchette reporting on Twitter saying, this is Foster saying, "What do you do? Here's a guy who doesn't give a damn. I guess so, we'll treat it as such. I just hate it came to this. He's making 7 times what I make and twice as much as Villanueva is making, and we're the guys who do it for him." Now, Le'Veon Bell actually saw this reported by Bleacher Report on Instagram and commented on the Instagram post saying this. Whoa, just that 4-letter word. WHOA. There's a lot there. 3,458 likes on Le'Veon's comment there. I'm not quite sure what he means by whoa there. Does he mean like, whoa, my teammate's stabbing me in the back, or whoa, I actually make 7 times more than one of my teammates? So yeah, that's kind of the big story doing the rounds at the moment in the lead up to the season. People just don't seem to know. All the NFL insiders are kind of very confused as to when he's actually going to return to practice, because he's essentially playing this game. I think he's got to return by November for him to actually play some part in this NFL season. But the most important story going into any NFL season, because they are the greatest sports team in the world, is taking a look at how the Buffalo Bills are getting on. And there was big news this week for any of our fellow Bills Mafia people, because first, of course, we had Superman, then we had Batman, and now we've got Peterman, because the Peterman is back. He's back in the hot seat. He is going to be their QB1 for the Buffalo Bills season ahead. And the Buffalo Bills actually put out a special video for him on Twitter.
Peterman going to go to the end zone again. Touchdown!
So great images here of Nathan Peterman in half-empty stadiums throwing the ball to his teammates, which is a huge development in the career of Nathan Peterman, who of course threw 5 interceptions in one NFL match last year. So the fact that he's throwing the ball to actual Buffalo Bills in pre-season is a very good sign. Now the reason why this was up for debate is because in the first round this year, I think he went 8 overall. They drafted Josh Allen from Wyoming. Now Josh Allen has been hit with a bit of criticism during the off-season, mainly from Jalen Ramsey, the Jaguars cornerback. He was speaking to GQ. We can have a look at his quotes. He says, "I think Allen is trash. I don't care what nobody say. He's trash, and it's going to show too. That's a stupid draft pick to me. We played him this year, and I'm excited as hell. I hope he's their starting quarterback. We played at Wyoming. He never beat big school. If you look at his games against big schools, it was always hella interceptions, hella turnovers. It's like, yo, if you're this good, why couldn't you do better? He fits that mold. He's big, tall quarterback. Big arm, supposedly. I don't see it personally, but it doesn't matter. Josh Allen is not going to get a run out because Nathan Peterman, he's going to usurp Blake Bortles as the best quarterback in the NFL, I suspect, this season. Finally, one of the big stories in terms of starting players this week is Shaquem Griffin. He's going to start for the Seattle Seahawks at the weekend. Just in terms of Nike ads, which we've seen plenty of this week, here is his Just Do It ad from earlier in the year. Who would ever think a kid like me would go pro? Me. And of course, if you didn't know, Shaquem Griffin got a lot of headlines before the draft, was on all the coast-to-coast shows. He is the player with one arm. He's going to start against Denver this weekend.
Mike Carlson, good morning to you. How you doing?
You guys have been entertaining me for the last 10 minutes.
That's good.
I feel like I'm just excess baggage now.
No, not at all. We wanted to talk to you about some of the big stories. I did want to get your take on just how much of a push the NFL are making on London at the moment. It seems like every year things ramp up to the point where they've got like a full 10, 15 days of publicity ongoing at the moment in London to drive attention to the start of the season as opposed to just driving attention to the games in London. So that combined with the pincer movement from Shad Khan trying to buy Wembley, it seems like something serious is happening in the background here.
Yeah, I mean, I for the last few years when I've been asked about the likelihood of a London franchise, I've always kind of been, 50-50 on it, partly because what they've got now works really well. And they can fill up Wembley or whatever stadium 3, even 4 times a season, and that seems pretty good to me. But it's obvious to me now that they are really making the push for not 24/7, but for 4 months of steady coverage and build up, because I think they want to have that public attention there, and they've done such a great job of getting media, which was so hard to do for a long time. When the first exhibition games came to Wembley in the Fridge in 1985, and that there was a big hubbub, but it faded fairly quickly. And the World League of American Football got big publicity its first year when the London Monarchs won it, and then that faded as well. But they've been able to, as you said, ramp it up every year and still get the response. It's a phenomenal PR exercise by the league.
Yeah, it does feel like it's leading to something specific. I mean, is it now more likely than not that Jacksonville will end up playing in 2 cities, or will they just move lock, stock and barrel to London? Like, is there a hybrid here, kind of a halfway house?
That would be, to me, a really good solution, a hybrid team. But I don't know how it would work with the fans on either side of the ocean. It would probably do better here than it played in Jacksonville, because one of the big problems with a team in London is that most British fans, European fans, already have their favorite NFL team, and their team loyalty is very strong. So if the question is whether that would transfer automatically to a London team, which I don't think it would, and therefore would you be able to sell season tickets for 8 games? if the team were not that great, would the people come to those would they come to the 6th, 7th, and 8th games?
Yeah, that's kind of reminiscent of the situation in Los Angeles, isn't it? Where there was just so long without a franchise that they'd already built up affiliations with other teams and a love for other teams. But ultimately, the teams that moved into LA didn't really care about that. Would that be the same attitude towards a London team?
It's kind of. I mean, you do have a dedicated fan base here, which in LA, the football fan base, such as it is, was always primarily a college one for USC or UCLA. And so teams have always struggled in Los Angeles. And the idea that 2 teams would succeed in Los Angeles, to me, just seems crazy. But there's, like London, there are so many other things to do. It's not even that it's not your first call of sports. It's not necessarily your first call of entertainment.
Yeah, the only counter-argument is that in Florida there are so many professional football teams that actually taking one out of the mix would probably be good for Miami and for Tampa Bay, and so ultimately the league thinks this is all going to work out okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it has a huge effect on that. More to the point is Jacksonville's one of the, apart from Green Bay, smallest cities in the NFL. And although the fan base is pretty dedicated there, they don't seem to miss it as much when the Jags come over and play. And I think the NFL sees small market Jacksonville, huge market London, and by association Ireland, England, half of Europe, and think that's something they could build on.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about Lev Bell. What's the likely outcome here? I mean, so maybe just briefly explain the franchise tag and how it works and why players resent playing under it despite the fact they make so much money.
Yeah, when a team franchises the player, he is paid the average of the top 5 salaries at his position in the league, but it's a 1-year contract. Now that the players can look at it either way, but when you're a running back, especially, it's an injury-prone position, and you really want the security of a long-term deal. In Bell's case, he thought he was being restricted because he considers himself both a running back and a receiver. He's so good at catching the ball, but basically he lines up as a running back, and that's where he's paid. He was saying he wanted to be paid 2 salaries. So this has gone on now. I think it's the 3rd season in a row where they franchised him, and that's very unusual because Kirk Cousins was franchised 3 years in a row, and that was just a waste of money in Washington's term, because eventually he left and they had paid him probably more than they would have if they'd given him a long-term deal. But like so many other teams, the salary cap affects Pittsburgh because they have money tied up long-term in other players, Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, and so they're happy enough to keep Bell keep him hanging every year, and Bell is more than happy to keep the Steelers hanging. And there used to be players who always held out and then showed up at the end of training and played, but they were usually linemen, good left tackles like Walter Jones in Seattle, who everybody knew was coming back. He just didn't want to go through all the hassle of training camp because he knew he didn't need it. Running back is a different kind of thing. You've got to get You can be in great shape, but not necessarily game shape for the cuts and the movement and things that you have to do. And I thought it was fascinating listening to that woman saying the Steelers had made him what he is. I covered Big Ten football when he was in college, and you could see that potential there. But it's been used much better in Pittsburgh than it was when he was in college. So there's an element of truth in what she said. He's
set to make $14.5 million this year.
And you got to feed your kids.
One of the themes of the coverage so far has been that if he comes back this year, the Steelers will run him into the ground in the same way that DeMarco Murray was treated, for example, by the Dallas Cowboys, where he ran, I think, something like 320 or 300, like way more than normal, and had a really down year the next year. And apparently the record of runners who run over 300 carries a season is really bad the next year. So Le'Veon Bell is obviously looking at this as like a 27-year-old thinking, I'd like another 3 or 4 years earning money, and everybody else knows how this game goes. So does he sit out to a certain point where no matter how many carries they give him, they can only hit a certain number, and he still doesn't lose his accrued year? Is that the brinkmanship we're at the moment?
Yeah, and once he's got the franchise deal is guaranteed. That's one of the upsides of it. So he doesn't have to play 16 games. He's still going to get paid for 16 games, unless the team were to suspend him or something like that. Todd Haley was their offensive coordinator. He's gone, and Haley was one of those guys who didn't seem to believe in playing two running backs in the same game. So they would have backups like D'Angelo Williams, who when Bell was hurt, Williams would play a whole game. Then Bell comes back, and Bell would play the whole game, and Williams wouldn't get more than 2 or 3 touches. And you're absolutely right. I think Football Outsiders came up with the 370 mark for ball carriers, and we've seen them not necessarily for contractual reasons run into the ground, but the obvious conclusion you can draw is that when a guy is in the last year of his contract and you're not going to be able to afford to re-sign him, there's no point in not running him as much as possible. But we said the same, or Bell said kind of the same thing, or people said the same thing about it for the last 2 years, and it hasn't happened once he was there.
Yeah.
The season does kick off tonight. Like, it does strike me looking at this, Mike, that is this like the most open race for a Super Bowl we've had in quite some time? I think looking back on last year, it might have been, but I don't think we were sitting here 12 months ago looking ahead, kind of salivating at the notion of an open run, whereas this year, I think we are.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, even successful teams have made big moves. So you think of Minnesota signing Kirk Cousins from Washington, and then Case Keenum has thus gone to Denver. I think in the NFC, it really is true. You've probably got 5, maybe 7 teams that could be in contention to go all the way. And the AFC is not really so strong. I mean, once you get beyond New England and Pittsburgh and Jacksonville, you're wondering. There's questions about every team. Some of them could be really good. I think New England against Houston will be a real interesting one on Sunday when Deshaun Watson plays against the Patriots for the first time. But tonight's game, Atlanta at Philadelphia, is a real good test. Philadelphia, the Super Bowl champions, and with Nick Foles, the backup quarterback who took them to the Super Bowl, is still playing because Carson Wentz isn't ready. And Atlanta, who were in the Super Bowl the year before, but disappointed last year, although they still made the playoffs. I think Atlanta's a really good team. And if they've shaken off that kind of curse of the Patriots comeback win in that Super Bowl 2 years ago, if they get back to the kind of form they had 2 years ago, this could be a really good game. They could have a really good season. When I picked 4 division winners and 2 wild card teams in the NFC, Atlanta was one of the wild card teams, so they could easily win that division. New Orleans, I had ahead of them, and any team that makes the playoffs in the NFC is probably going to be a good shot to be able to go through.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. That if you're picking teams, it's worth picking the slightly longer odds in the NFC and just stacking up in the NFC and hoping that whoever it is manages to beat the Patriots, basically.
The AFC, yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll see about every year we say the same thing. We'll see about the Patriots, and I'm actually wondering on Sunday because they've been notoriously slow starters the past few years. Remember week 1 last year, Kansas City completely blew them out, and everybody said, that's the end of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. You can never write them off, but the way preseason works now with the new rules to have less contact, protect the players. The 4 preseason games have become almost meaningless. Whereas it used to be 2 of them were relatively meaningful. Now you hardly see the best players at all for most teams. So teams like the Patriots tend to use September like they used to use preseason 20 years ago to see what they've got and how it's going to play out. And I don't think they worry particularly, if they're going to lose. Well, they don't want to lose a game, obviously, but if they lose a game or 2, they figure they'll get it back in November and December.
Yeah. Who would you advise for people kind of coming to the league early to watch out for this year? Obviously, Deshaun Watson, as you mentioned there, was a huge breakout star last year before that injury. Who's going to be the Deshaun Watson this year, even in a position other than quarterback? The obvious one is Shaquan Barkley at the Giants, the running back who they took with the 2nd pick in the draft. They've needed one for a long time. He's one. We have a couple of them. I was going to say once in a generation, but we seem to get one every 2 years or so. But he's in that Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott kind of mold. He's big, he's fast, and he's got good hands to catch the ball. So he should be a good fit. And the Giants have gone all in
trying to get Eli Manning sort of one last shot at the playoffs. Odell Beckham is back for them, and that makes a huge difference, obviously. And, the interesting division, I think, is that AFC South with the Jacksonville Jags, who were so good last year and simply just lost their bottle against the Patriots in the second half of the AFC Championship game. Tennessee's got a new coach. They've got good personnel, which Mike Mularkey was never able to take the best advantage of. They also added Deion Lewis and Malcolm Butler from the Patriots, which helps them on both sides of the ball. Watson's back for the Texans. So is J.J. Watt, and so is Whitney Merciless, one of the great names in football. So they're going to be better on both sides of the ball as well. And Watson, when he played last year as a rookie, averaged 30 points. They averaged 30 points a game when he was playing. So I think that's I think that game could be a shootout up in Foxborough on Sunday. And then you've got the Colts, who I think are going to be pretty bad, but Andrew Luck is back. And Andrew Luck took some pretty bad Colts teams to the playoffs when he was healthy. He can get them to 8-8, say, almost on the strength of his arm if they can keep him upright. So I think that's a great division to follow, because you could see one playoff team, you could see 3 playoff teams from that division, but I think that's unlikely because they'll wind up beating each other.
Yeah, Mike, one of the great names in football. Thanks very much for joining us, and it's great talking to you. We look forward to talking to you across the season.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Mike Carlson with us there, helping to preview the season. If you ever have any questions that you want us to put to Mike, or indeed anything that you want explained from the world of football, we'll do that on our new weekly podcast as well. Keane Fahey's going to join us every week.
I just wanted him. I just teed him up there. I just wanted him to give me a little bit of confidence in my fantasy team by mentioning Saquon Barkley there.
Did you pick Saquon?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I got him 8th actually in one of my drafts.
You're picking with chumps.
I was actually. I'll be sending that clip onto them. I was kind of hoping he was going to say Josh Allen there as well, but unfortunately not.
Not yet anyway.
Not ever, probably.
Here's a clip from the Keith Andrews show. It's Keith Andrews talking about Roy Keane. You can catch the full thing on youtube.com/offtheball, or of course you can just subscribe to all our football podcasts as well, offtheball.com/podcasts. Have a look.
Is there constant rows during international camps where people are having a pop at each other?
I wouldn't say during international breaks. In my experience, it was very common. Day to day, the monotony of you will find as well when results aren't going particularly well. That's when kind of things temper start to go a little bit. But it's not common having rows and coming together with staff. That isn't common.
When Tardelli was there, and Tardelli was, listen, he always had something to say for himself, and he often made a off the cuff quip about a player. Was there never an issue where people would be fronting up?
Look at dressing rooms, half time, losing 1-0, you're getting mainly staff will be breaking things up with players as players are, or in training when there's a late tackle and you get up and you react. I had a little bit with Seamus Coleman when he first came into the squad. Whatever it was, I can't even remember what the instance was, but was he right or were you right? Issue. I was probably right. There's no big issue as long as it's left there and then. But what I'm getting at is it's not common with staff. It really isn't. And that's the point I'm making about Roy Keane. He is in a very responsible role who should be looking after those players. He should be treating them like his kids. That I need to protect this group. I am in this for one reason, to get us to Euro 2020, to try and get us to the World Cup in 2018. That's why I'm in it. So how am I going to do that? Really, there was a great piece in the end of this week as well. He could have players running through brick walls for him because he is on that pedestal. I've already mentioned he's an iconic player. If I was playing centre midfield and I was in a squad and he was involved, I would be itching for every little bit of advice. And if he gave me that little bit of encouragement or that kind of nod of approval, you would just go like, I'm having this.
Yeah, there you go. Great stuff from Keith Andrews. Great insight It was Wednesday this week because the lads are actually obviously in Cardiff for the game tonight. Nathan alongside Gary Breen in the commentary box for full commentary of Ireland against Wales. A couple of quick comments for you about that. The hysterics over the alleged pointlessness of the UEFA Nations League is bordering on anti-intellectualism. Railway Cup my arse. We'll be glad of it when we don't qualify for the Euros through the usual methods.
Here.
Says at Sean_Fla and
Railway Cup was one of the worst comparisons I've ever heard in my life.
Et tu, Brute. Dave McIntyre, our own Dave McIntyre, tweeting in, "This is a huge game tonight. We win the group, we're guaranteed a Euro 2020 playoff place. Otherwise, we had to finish top 2 in our qualification group. Unlikely. Railway Cup my arse." I'm going to get that tattooed to me. I actually WhatsApp that to us, so hashtag OTBAM. There you go.
That's pro-intellectualism then.
They're accusing me of being anti-intellectual.
Oh, okay.
Well, you are.
Well, I mean, your description of how we qualify wasn't particularly...
It was just a little bit above your understanding.
It was definitely operating on a higher plane, the same plane that you're operating at on Electric Picnic. How are you, Darren?
I'm very well, Ger. Let's hear from the Republic of Ireland captain, Seamus Coleman. He doesn't feel that it's the Railway Cup of international football. He's urged the fresh faces in the squad to seize the opportunity presented to them this evening. The boys in green finalising preparations for that clash with Wales. The growing list of injuries mean Callum Robinson could go straight into the mix tonight. James McLean, Alan Brown, the latest players to be ruled out this week. Coleman relishing the beginning of a new era and the skipper's comments about the pride that new players need to show in representing their country, particularly striking after events of this week.
Look, we've obviously lost a few players due to retirement that have been around for the last couple of years and understood what we're all about, and unfortunately at the minute as well we've got a few injuries, but that's what's going on at the minute. The people that are coming into the squad, the people that the manager picks, will know what it means to represent our country and how proud they should be, and more importantly, the effort that we put in every time we meet up, whatever's going on at club level, if you're playing or not playing. When you come away here, you've got to get in the fold and do what's expected of us, and I'm sure the new lads will do that and will be very proud to represent their country. And as I said, a result here tomorrow night will give everyone that great feeling that a lot of us have had throughout the years.
Yeah, Coleman really hammering home the importance there of what it should mean to represent your country. Pretty striking comments. He's on the charm offensive as well. He said that Declan Rice would be welcome back and there's no reason why he can't feel English and Irish and represent Ireland. Some breaking news to bring you as well from our man in Cardiff, or our man on the road to Cardiff. That's Nathan Murphy there tweeting news about Alan Judge.
Yeah, so the 24 travels, match day 23. Then Woodburn is not on the Wales squad.
Yeah, it's not overly unexpected.
Tommy says it's a bit of a surprise.
Is it?
Woodburn, sorry.
Oh, Woodburn, yes. Yeah. Well, it kind of more to do with the fact that he's kind of a bigger name, but he's still a teenager. That's actually one of the kind of depressing things looking at this, is Wales are clearly on paper a far better team than this Ireland team. Granted, that's due to injuries as well, but also how vastly younger they are than Ireland's. I think there's who's Ireland's youngest player? Callum O'Dowda, 23. I think there's 9 players on the Wales squad.
Callum Robinson, if he's in,
Callum Robinson is
23.
Was it last year a Young Player of the Year was 25?
O'Dowda's younger.
Was that last year or the year before?
Well, the Christie was awarded Young Player of the Year famously. 9 players in the Wales squad younger than Callum O'Dowda. But actually, this is actually a perfect opportunity for a great marketing push. If Callum O'Dowda and Callum Robinson both play well today, the two Callums...
A month apart.
Right, okay. And tearing down the wings today to terrorise Wales, it could be the start of something beautiful for Irish football.
Likely not, though. A salesman and a student, part of the makeshift Denmark side. They lost 3-0 to Slovakia last night in an international friendly. Martin O'Neill a bit perturbed about this situation. He's called on UEFA to do something about the dispute over commercial rights that has seen the regular Danish squad refuse to play. O'Neill says Ireland would be at a serious disadvantage if the same players lined out against Wales in the Nations League on Sunday. The France manager Didier Deschamps says he's disappointed that none of their World Cup winners have been nominated for the Best FIFA Men's Player of the Year award. Antoine Griezmann and Kylian Mbappe were key to the Blues' success. Les Bleus, they won the biggest prize in world football. Neither figured on the 3-man shortlist that included Cristiano Ronaldo, Mo Salah and Luka Modric. Deschamps stopped short of saying none of them were deserving, but he was keen to highlight Griezmann's achievements, saying Antoine and a few other French players have been deserved in that list too. When you consider their achievement with their national team this summer, then what they've done with the clubs as well, they should have been included.
Was Griezmann grand in the early stages but really brilliant in the final, and so therefore, because he didn't shoot the lights out in the tournament the way that people had maybe anticipated, plus he gets minus super extra bonus points for the making us watch an hour of shite TV to announce that he was staying with Atletico.
I kind of enjoyed it, but
yeah, but it's you've got to move. Can't have a big hoo-ha about signing a new contract at your own team.
Yeah, the ending was shite, but the rest of it was good. It was nicely shot. But yeah, I don't think he was deserving to be in that. I don't even looking at
Mbappe.
He's the one that deserves to be on it.
Yeah, come on.
Whether or not he does deserve to be on the shortlist, I'm not sure, but he is the one who deserves to be on from that French team.
He does. Mbappe does
Messi deserves it more than Mbappe. No question about that.
But actually, there comes a point where you go, the World Cup is the World Cup. And so therefore, whatever happens in the World Cup trumps everything. It's like this kind of debate about, some lads played really well in the Super 8s, but I'm sorry, the players who dominate the All-Ireland semi-final and final,
So
they're the ones who actually ultimately deserve it, because those games, the size of those games dictates that you have to value them more than the other games.
Who are you tipping for Footballer of the Year then?
This year?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Using that logic, it's got to be Jack McCaffrey. He was literally man of the match in semi-final and final. He's got to be Footballer of the Year.
Yeah.
So are you going to kick up a fuss when Kieran Kilkenny wins it?
Like, no, because Kilkenny played really well in the semi-final and final as well, and like has a role in the team that's different from McCaffrey. Like, you're kind of saying these two players played really well in both the big games. I think like it was touch and go. Nobody thought McCaffrey was the only candidate for man of the match in the final.
Yeah.
There was definitely a case to be made, and you could still make the case that Kieran Kilkenny deserved it, or that a couple of other players, that Howard deserved it, or that Paul Mannion deserved it.
But like Messi scored one of the best goals in the World Cup. And he had an unbelievable club season, a probably better club season than Mo Salah. It was just because it was Mo Salah, and not a lot of people expected him to be that bloody good in his first season with Liverpool.
But
that's why he's made it.
Kylian Mbappe is an unbelievable, like, that is the start of...
Yeah, he was the standout star of the World Cup.
Yeah.
He was the guy that captured everyone's imagination.
In the World Cup, yeah. Plays for PSG though. I mean, his league achievements aren't really kind of considered.
Wales are 11-10 on to beat Ireland tonight, and it's 2-1 the draw, and there's an enhanced price of, is it 5-1 or 6-1 for Ireland on offtheball.com/Boyle Sports. I don't know what the hell's going to happen in this game now. I've talked myself into everything, every potential outcome.
0-0 draw.
Like, yeah,
that's the most likely, isn't it?
You've talked this into being like a super team with other countries from around the continent.
Is there not like a one moment of genius from Gareth Bale wins the game, the quality on the pitch? Is that like, am I already writing the match report? Two mediocre teams played out a boring blah blah blah, appropriate for this crappy competition, enlivened only by this single moment of genius from the standout player Gareth Bale. Deep into the second half, when we thought that we'd already written the intros for the 0 draws, we had to hurriedly change this.
And then there was silence as the noise rushed out of the stadium and rushed back in as the ball hit the back of the net.
Can't wait to read that tomorrow. It's going to be brilliant. Get it, Games. Kevin McStay is calling the GAA to finance weaker counties and ensure that football can remain competitive. He has decided to retire after 3 years at the helm of Roscommon. In a statement, he highlighted some of the challenges that they've faced. He says if the GAA is committed to ensuring all counties are at a minimum competitive, then they must be supported financially in a way that reflects the demands and the needs for fairness, equity and solidarity. In the last decade, the county has received funding to the tune of €625,000 in coaching and games development grants. In that same period, between 2007 and 2017, Dublin received over €16 million. That's 15 million more than the next best funded county, that's Cork. The beaten All-Ireland finalists Tyrone received €560,000 in that time. Dublin also trousered €12.76 million in funding from the Sports Capital Programme, which totals 56 million. Last year, 26 projects in the city received the maximum allocation of €150,000. Dublin's chief executive is John Costello, and he has dismissed the suggestion that money gives Dublin an unfair advantage.
We have a network of clubs, of volunteers who are involved in clubs. We do have a system where the majority of clubs in Dublin would have a games promotion officer, but actually they are part funded by the clubs themselves. The clubs are paying, I think, 18,000 towards the 50% of the cost of the official, and they're taking that from their own resources. They're fundraising through backpacking, through selling raffle tickets, so on. So that's the trust that I have. But it's the volunteers in the clubs, it's the teachers in the schools that have all shaped these players here today, and I suppose they are an exceptional bunch of players as well. That has to be admitted also.
Is the grant allocation given to Dublin give them an unfair advantage, do you feel?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, it's just per head of capita, whatever. We're trying, there's areas of Dublin where the GAA would not be particularly strong, and we're trying to always work and establish new clubs in different areas out in Clondalk and Tyrrellstown, different parts of the city. So it's a huge challenge out there, even the north inner city and the south inner city. There are challenges, and we want to bring GAA to new audience.
Finally to tennis, Kai Nishikori overcame 17 Marin Cilic in a gruelling 5-set match to reach the US Open semi-finals overnight. Both players struggled in an error-strewn encounter with high temperatures in New York, once again a factor. Novak Djokovic put an end to Australian John Millman's US Open campaign in straight sets. The Serb will face Nishikori in the semi-final next week. The heat, a huge factor. Millman forced off to change his entire outfit, including shoes, in the second set. His gear was so soaked from sweat, he couldn't keep his balls in his pocket.
Hey, there you go. Good.
Imagine that when your shoes are actually like starting to get soaked. That's disgusting.
That's what you take from that, Owen?
Yes, I mean he was. I
wouldn't give his balls in his pocket, Owen.
Yeah, no, I heard the line.
That's the bit.
I'm not 9.
It's 16 years on. 16 long bloody years. It's about time for this testy teenager to sling their hook and move out. 16 years since we've been talking about Saipan, but we're going to give it one more turn, one more go. Here it is last night. Mick McCarthy was in with Joe, and apropos of, conversations about Roy Keane, just decided, I'm going to bring it up. Have a look.
So, John Walters had a little scuffle with Roy Keane. There was a remark about time spent on the treatment table. And then Walters is back in the squad.
He's about 35 in his job.
34 now, and he's going to be starting tomorrow, and he's indestructible. I think his knees are bad. I don't think he trains much. Wow. And then Harry Arter, who has decided that he's ruled himself out of international football for the time being, certainly, and Martin O'Neill confirmed this week it was pretty much down to the altercation.
What about John on the treatment table? Anyway, I thought there was he's 34. Nobody ever complained about Paul McGrath being on the treatment table.
No, I'm sure Roy in the latter half of his career spent plenty of time resting up or watching his body. It happens.
Well, you never accuse a player of feigning injury, do you?
No. That's a loaded comment to make.
Or do you have the right to do it? I don't know.
Are you saying you didn't?
I'm not saying anything I did.
My brain went into overdrive there. When you said you'd never accuse a player of feigning injury, that was clearly a reference to O2. And I feel it's weird for me not to follow up on that. Are you saying that you never said it? Or...
Well, that comment's being made, and you never...
That's what Roy said. I was accused of feigning injury, and you can't do that, and that's why I lost the plot.
Well... You have to look back on all the things that were said. There's only been 1,955,000 pages written on it, so I'll let that one lie at that.
Okay.
That's the latest. It's getting more confusing. You never accuse a player of feigning injury, do you? And what was the next line? Except when you're entitled, are you entitled to, or you're not entitled to?
Yeah, I couldn't quite make out what he was trying to say.
It's just got that kind of, it's like that gravelly voice. It's a great voice, but...
Although you've every right to, is that what he said? Oh, it's very mysterious.
Oh, was that it?
That was my initial...
Although you've every right to, you think?
Yeah, but the way Joe asked the next question would suggest that that's not what he said.
See, there's a case to be made that he was like... in the midst of this row, just saying, you're picking and choosing your games, because we had a deal with Alex Ferguson. It all gets lost on the, you had a hamstring injury, that's not the point. The point is you didn't play the game. But ultimately, you didn't need to play the game because he was so good and we were already qualified, so, It did end up being a fight about nothing that we're now kind of should have just played.
Does it hurt you more now, or did it hurt you more back then?
Well, you look at the Carlsberg ad that we played on the show every day for a week. That was a realistic possibility.
Yeah.
That wasn't, and we had the best midfielder in the world. We had Duff and Robbie Keane. Steve Staunton was an excellent ball-playing centre back.
Brilliant goalkeeper, brilliant full backs.
Ian Hart was not at his absolute peak during it, but Steve Finnan couldn't get in the team for the first game because Mick picked Gary Kelly, because Gary Kelly was good off the pitch in the aftermath of the Saipan thing. So, look, he wasn't a great manager.
He had a great team.
He has to accept that. It was a brilliant Ireland team. In retrospect, it was an absolutely brilliant Ireland team.
Surely you realised that at the time, no?
Well, yeah, of course, when we're beating the Dutch.
Yeah.
With 10 men.
There's no retrospect about it. It was, you knew while you were living in the moment.
No, you didn't know that the rest of international football had kind of come back to us in the way that it had done so quickly. That that Brazil team that wins it at that time was nowhere near as good. In the build-up to that World Cup, we didn't know how good Brazil were going to be because you weren't sure how good Ronaldo was going to be.
Argentina were favourites.
Were they?
They were, yeah. They definitely were.
That Germany team weren't great. Really weren't great. Reaches the final. basically on the back of Khan being brilliant. South Korea, obviously, however they managed to make it all the way in the tournament that they did.
Good players and good heart.
Yeah, and endless ability to run. And Trapattoni was in charge of Italy, and turns out he wasn't a great international manager.
Yeah, there's a lot of what ifs, and it's just kind of digging up all day.
It definitely doesn't hurt.
Still hurts Mick McCarthy.
Definitely doesn't hurt as much now. I mean, I don't know why. Like he took the team as far as he could take the team.
But maybe it's more than about how far you take the team. Maybe it's about relationships that are lost that didn't need to be lost.
The fact that he's haunted by it still.
Yeah, not on a professional level. Like, it's a very proud achievement. You took Ireland to the last 16 of a World Cup in this century. Like, that is a huge achievement. But maybe he just feels, maybe before that they were like had so much admiration for one another, and then it all just dissipated like that over something so stupid.
They didn't have admiration for each other. Like, Paul Howard wrote a great book, The Gaffers, which kind of pinpoints and plotted out all of the difficulties that the two of them had with each other over a 3-year period in the build-up to that. Keane gets sent off in his first game under Mick McCarthy as captain for kicking somebody up the hole. He literally just turns around and boots one of the Russians up the hole, I think it was, and that's a clear indication that, well, this isn't, because it was like in the 90th minute, completely irrelevant, the game was over, and it's like, so he wasn't really engaged by the Ireland international setup at that point as a player. Now, I wonder what he would think of that as a manager himself, or would the conditions be such that most players would be engaged by what's going on? It turns out probably not is the case. It certainly doesn't seem that way with Harry Arter, with Declan Rice, even with Johnny Walters, like having rows with them all the time. So
I wonder, do you become, when you turn into management after being such a successful player, do you become a managerial version of your player, or do you embody the managers that you've learned from? Like, are we seeing more Alex Ferguson and Mick McCarthy in how Roy Keane behaves, or are we seeing more Roy Keane the player?
I don't know. It's an impossible question really to answer, but it's a good question. Like, who is Keane as a manager? He's got to get back into managing full time on his own, where he is the boss and he is making all the decisions. We get the opportunity to see if he has learned from his time at Ipswich and Sunderland, because Sunderland was actually quite successful ultimately.
It's a long time ago in football terms, though.
It is, yeah. The Fake Dragon says, after a dire season last year, do you think the 49ers have done enough in the draft and free agency to make the team successful, at least a winning season? Yeah, they'll have a winning season. I'm pretty sure they're going to have a winning season. I don't know if they're going to do any better than that. The injury to Jarrett McKinnon in pre-season. There's only been like 4 cruciate knee ligament injuries in the entire NFL this pre-season compared with like last year and the year before. Which
is the way it should be.
Yeah.
Like, at least save yourself for 2 games before blowing your knee out.
Yeah. Maybe they'll start coming in the next couple of weeks when the contact happens. Darrow Toole says the 49ers should bring back Kaepernick. Great timing to capitalise on the Nike campaign.
See, that's kind of messed up, isn't it?
Which bit?
Capitalising on Nike. Like, why not capitalise, like, do what Nike have done? Like, capitalise on Colin Kaepernick, capitalise on the fact that he is a fantastic footballer. Exactly. Yeah. Like, it's so weird. Like, I saw LeBron James talking yesterday saying, I 100% stand by Nike. What a weird statement to make. That's kind of like a heavyweight boxer back in the day saying I stand with Muhammad Ali, or any of the people who knelt during the national anthems saying I stand or kneel by Colin Kaepernick. Since when have Nike become... since when have they embodied this protest? Like, they've completely hijacked the Colin Kaepernick protest. And I'm totally sure that it was done in good heart to a certain extent.
So
they backed Colin Kaepernick because they believe in what he's saying, but ultimately they're backing him in a way that they're hijacking the entire thing.
Just on that, I would assume that, and it'll be interesting to see when they come out and like if there's any documentation about this, but I would assume that they've focus grouped the level of outrage there will be when they back Colin Kaepernick and decided that, yeah, we'll sell and this will have an impact on our bottom line, because they're like a publicly quoted company, so therefore the decisions they make have to benefit all of the shareholders. The shareholding went down like 3%, 3 cents. It went down anyway the first day. I've no doubt that it's going to come back up.
Of course it will.
Like, and as time goes, this will come to be seen as like a marketing mastermind. 3.2% was down the first day.
But if Nike ever backed the losing horse?
But in a way, who cares? Like, who cares if they've hijacked it? They've actually helped to...
That's kind of the point I'm trying to make, though.
They've actually helped to bring it to a much wider audience, and they've helped to bring Kaepernick's story to a much wider audience. Now, it depends what happens next. It really depends. Like, he's given away over $1 million, maybe $2 million, and he's going to continue giving away millions of dollars to small charities that are at the absolute coalface of inner city America, that are helping kids and helping societies deal with loads of different issues, from legal issues to school and all that kind of stuff. So, like, he is, it seems to me, unbelievably genuine in what he's doing. And now he's got a much bigger platform because of Nike. So there's a, like, symbiotic / host-parasite relationship going on, depending on how you want to spin that. And you can spin it host-parasite as, like, this mega corporation using Colin Kaepernick to sell stuff. Or you can also spin it as, like, they're helping use their platform to put Colin Kaepernick's stuff out there in the face of the President of the United States tweeting bullshit about him. Like, he's just evening up the odds a little bit.
Yeah, like, it is very weird as well how, if you look at Colin Kaepernick and the hate he's been taking from very obvious parties, let's just use the most obvious example of Donald Trump. And the hate that has come Nike's way from Donald Trump this week, being a minute version of what Donald Trump has previously uttered in terms of the anthem protesters, aka saying, I've still got a lot of respect for Nike because they pay good rent on a building that I own. And it's like, if we are marrying these two things together, then suddenly the heat coming from the President of the United States of America towards this social justice warrior is actually a lot less than it previously was. And is that a good thing? Well, because of the position that he holds, it probably is, and because of the power that he wields. So there is positives in that, but I do think you can believe that, and you can believe in all the positives while also pointing out the very obvious fact that Nike have completely hijacked the Colin Kaepernick protest. It's also worth pointing out as well, and I'm not really being facetious here at all. Like, if you look at that video of the guy burning his Nike shoes, like, they're a shit pair of runners. They're like bought 15 years ago or something. It's like the Nike brand has moved into a multicultural market in a far-reaching way than it's ever seen before. Like, when you talk about the Republicans buy sneakers too line, like, that was a quote made in its time. That's not really a quote that applies too much to today. Given, like, is it like $3 trillion per year pumped into Nike from the black community in America? Something like that. It's an absolutely gigantic figure. Like, as you say, they focus group people. They've seen how this would make business sense, and they're pretty happy to piss off a huge demographic.
Okay, a couple more. Jalen Ramsey only second in hot takes to Ger, says Kevin Flynn just this morning. But the good thing about Jalen Ramsey's one interview that he did with GQ, if you don't know this, he's the outspoken cornerback, the latest outspoken cornerback, who said that basically every QB in the entire league is absolute shit. The good thing is that every week there's going to be another piece of Jalen Ramsey stuff that people go back to and say, ooh, this is going to be pretty interesting. The Fake Dragon says, I don't know if Cap will be the same QB without Harbaugh as coach. After the 49ers traded away Gore, I lost faith in their entire strategy. I'd like them to trade whatever it took to bring Andrew Luck to the Bay. I think they're doing okay. I think Jimmy G is going to be okay. And Liam Tracy says, pro sport is boring enough. We don't need more makey-uppy clubs about an NFL London franchise. What are you talking about, Liam? Almost every football team in America was made up at one point or another.
There's a comment in here from Jimmy Armstrong saying, complete bullshit by Ger to dismiss McCarthy as not a great manager.
Well, if your definition of great is championship manager, happy days, Jimmy.
Championship manager is a great game.
Good man yourself. No, not the
championship man. I know what you meant.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all the comments calling you out on your bullshit, which unfortunately is quite a low number.
It started early and it's lasted the entire way through the show this morning.
We could power rank your bullshit from this morning. Mick McCarthy, average manager. Railway Cup is obviously number one. Like, right up there. It's going to be unmoved for the season ahead.
All right. Just to tell you, of course, a reminder that the show every morning, OTB AM, is brought to you in association with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. We've two more things to bring you this morning. The first one that we're going to bring you is Irish kayaker and DIT athlete Sam Curtis, who is competing at the ICF World Cup Finals in Spain this weekend. He dropped into the studio recently. You had a good chat with him?
Yeah, great chat. As you say, big event coming up for him soon. He's one of the hopefuls for Tokyo 2020. Not there yet, but we're giving him all our support over the next couple of days and weeks. And we sat down for a good old chat there a couple of weeks ago. Irish paddler Sam Curtis joins us now in studio. Sam, how are things?
Not too bad at all. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming in. So we wanted to chat a little bit about you, about your sport, about the funding you get and things like that. And I think the best thing to start off with is kind of an explainer to some people who wouldn't know you, what the K1 slalom canoe is, because we'll have all watched it in the Olympics, but it's been 2 years now since a lot of people will have watched the event. So explain to us what you do.
So I paddle K1, which is the single kayak men's. Then there's also the C1, which is canoe men's. So I'm sitting in a boat with a double-bladed paddle and going down slalom course like that.
How long have you been doing it for?
I have been doing it I've been canoeing for 12 years now. I've been racing seriously for about 8 or 7.
So you're from Dunboyne in County Meath. I dare say that there's a lot of places in Ireland where you can't exactly pop out and just participate in the sport. So how did you get into it?
My older brother actually started, a friend of his up the road started, and I wasn't doing anything. Well, I was doing football, but I was rubbish at it. So I just did that instead, and I really took to it. I just really started enjoying it. And then did a talent ID day with Owen Reinish, and just started coming up well through that. So just stuck to it then.
Yeah. So where do you go to train? Where do you go to actually get into this as a young kid looking to get into the sport?
So depending on, you generally go to Canoeing Ireland, then you'd kind of just start. You wouldn't start straight into slalom. You just start learning your basic skills, like the same way you wouldn't go straight into sprinting. You just kind of go for a run. You go to Canoeing Ireland, you learn your basic skills, and then various clubs or the Canoe Slalom Ireland's actually development squad would pick you up then.
And how many clubs do we have in Ireland?
I wouldn't know exactly. There's like a good few clubs. They're very spread out across the country. But again, slalom being a very high end one, there's very few. It's a real Dublin centred kind of sport. Really, yeah, Dublin centred.
And presumably as well, everybody likes to do as much of their training as possible in Ireland. But I presume for you, actually getting abroad is sometimes a necessary step.
Oh, it's 100% necessary. Just the standard of whitewater that we race on, we race down a whitewater course. The standard that we just don't have in Ireland, and you just have to get away to train on that, so you're on par with what everyone else is doing.
So when you're looking for a whitewater course, it's obviously more rapids, things like that. Obviously, we've got a lot of still water in Ireland, so it's unfortunate, isn't it? Like, we've got plenty of different rivers and all that sort of stuff, but a lot of them just probably aren't fast enough for somebody looking to qualify for the Olympics.
Well, at the moment, nearly every course we race on is artificial. It's man-made, so it's purpose-built for slalom. So my mentality of it is, in Ireland we don't have that, but we have flat water rivers. Sure. That I can say, if I have a river, I can get on my boat and I can train hard, and there's no excuse for me not to be as fit as everybody. And then when I go away, I can hone those technical skills.
Okay, I see. That's very interesting. We'll come back to that as well when it comes to man-made courses and things like that. But we do want to actually show some of the footage. This is one of the World Cup events. I think we might show Krakow, which was one of the World Cup events. This is Krakow, right?
This is Krakow, yeah.
So talk us through this. What are you thinking?
Well, this was actually one of my best runs this season. I was barely outside of the qualification standard that I need for the Olympics, and as well barely outside of the semi-final, which was a goal. Right. So essentially, it's racing down again an artificial course, as you can see here, and it's about 22 gates. 18 of those gates roughly you go downstream, so you go with the current, and then, as just happened there, is an upstream gate, so you're coming back against the current, and there's 6 of them in a run.
Okay, so is this the same course that you would get all over the world, considering it's artificial? Is there a standard sort of World Cup / Olympics / championships course?
There's loose requirements you have to meet, so it has to be 300 metres long and of a certain gradient, but that's one of the great things about the sport, that every course we race on is really unique, because no two are built exactly the same. So it means that certain courses will have a different way the water moves, and will have a different way the gates are set, so it keeps things changing the whole time.
So at this point, you're almost finished. What did you say, 21 gates?
Yeah.
You're pretty satisfied so far. It looks. Have you missed any gates so far in this?
No. If you miss a gate, you've got a 50-second penalty, and then even if you touch a gate, it's a 2-second penalty. So you really want to stay. You want to stay as far away from those gates as you can, and stay safe. So, and then by this stage of the run, your arms are in pieces. You're really feeling the lactic burn. So staying off them is easier said than done.
Yeah, for sure. So clearly that's a really, really good run. So at the end there, have you missed anything?
Nothing. And then I had one touch.
It seems that if you miss a gate, you're screwed. It's like you may as well forget about it.
Game over.
Yeah, especially at that level.
Oh, absolutely. It's just game over.
And then what does a touch do then?
Touch is 2 seconds. you have kind of two options if you touch a gate. Like, one, you can kind of stick to your plan, which we ideally do, and two is if you're aware you touched and it's early enough in the course, at times you'll kind of be like, right, that's 2 seconds gone, I'm going to just go for it.
Okay, I see.
And it's kind of risk versus reward. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. So generally, you just stick to your plan.
Right, okay. So that can make it more of a tactical thing than it seems at face value sometimes. We're also seeing this now. This is Slovakia.
This is Krakow again. This is my second run, which was a near identical run, which is something I'm looking forward to really build consistency.
So talk to us about these events. I mentioned Slovakia there. Krakow was another event. These are World Cup events. There's 5 World Cup events in a season?
There's 5 World Cup races spread across the whole year. So it's just an accumulation of points. So it's 100 points for first and so on and so forth as it goes down. And whoever's most points at the end wins.
And we're in the middle of the World Cup spell at the moment. How are you getting on so far?
Not too badly. My results have been consistent, but not as good as I'd like. So I'm really focusing now on the World Cup final, which is coming up at the start of September. And because it's the World Cup final, it's double points. So if I get a good result there, I get double points there, and it'll bump up my standing a bit.
Right, okay. And does that have any bearing on Olympic qualification or anything like that?
It doesn't directly, because the Olympic qualification is a once-off event for us at the World Championships next year. Sure. But the World Cup final is on the same course, so it's just really good preparation that we're going to use it as like a dry run for next year for the World Championships.
And that's in Spain, the final World Cup event?
Up in the north of Spain.
Up in the north of Spain. What's the place called?
Liceo d'Urgell.
Right, I've never heard. Is it a popular place? Is it like?
It is not.
Okay, right.
Its entire population is elderly people and canoeists.
Okay,
and
I see.
That's it.
So for people who've been paddling for a long time, would you have heard of the place as almost like the Holy Grail? Like quite a lot of the ski slopes would be for snow sports people.
100%. Liceo d'Urgell is the 1992 Olympic course, so it's one of the gold standard, one of the traditional places that we go and race, and it's a gorgeous setting as well because you're surrounded by the Pyrenees Mountains.
Absolutely. So would the plan be to spend a lot of time over the course of the next few months there to almost set up camp? I know obviously you've got a few things going on with your education at the moment as well, that it might not be something you can do automatically.
Yeah, like we're trying to make that effectively our home course. So I want to be as good there as I am in Ireland. So we've done I think 2 or 3 trips already this year, and then we're going over for 3 weeks now for the World Cup, and then we're going to get over in the winter and all of next year. So it's everything now is focused on that Olympic qualification.
When you say we, who are you talking about?
Well, me and then whoever I'm training with. So like the higher group who I'm training with, and then if we can get our coach Owen Reinish over as well, he's reputably good on that course. So it's good to have him out there.
Yeah, it's great that this new generation have someone like Reinish to look up to.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, he's been to 3 Olympics, so I mean, he's the best person to get me to one.
Yeah, like he'll have seen it up close, what is required to go really, really far in the sport. He'll have seen the very, very top performers, what the pressure is like on these occasions when the world is watching. So I presume there's been a lot of conversations that happen with him where he's almost like a father figure to a number of you, I'd imagine, that he can actually give you that level of education in the sport.
Oh, it's absolutely, it's a universal kind of coaching that we get, that like he's not just my technical coach, that like he does like tactical stuff and psychology stuff and nutrition, and he just really just sets us up to be as good an athlete and as good a paddler as we can. So it's a really universal kind of education that he gives us.
And how many Irish paddlers are going to be going over?
There will be, at the race itself, we should have a big enough team. I'd say there'd be about 10 of them going over across all the categories, because we only have 3 in each category, and Owen as well.
And what's the standard like?
It's really on the rise. It's massively on the rise. So in K1 men, which is my class, it's getting so competitive. So now where there's 3 spots in the team, there's about 6 or 7 guys who can make that, where there used to be maybe 4. And again, now everyone who goes in the team has potential to be competitive when we go away. Whereas there used to be a few journeymen who just kind of go to the races.
Right.
Whereas now everyone's competitive, and everybody is people aren't kind of looking like, oh, it's the Irish team, sure. They don't have rivers. Now they're getting a bit kind of Irish team's kind of getting kind of quick. I want to start worrying, which is what we want.
That's very interesting. Why has that changed, that culture?
Just through there was kind of a bit when Owen retired, there was a little bit of a gap that I was the only one who was kind of at a good standard, and we had a bit of a gap for a while where there wasn't great standards. So we got they'd see the Irish team and they'd see people racing oh, that's not great. Whereas now everyone's starting to come up, so they can just through exposure to Irish team just being better than we used to be.
Yeah. Is there a sense that your generation now is in a position where you have to be good, you have to succeed if you want to get the recognition? Because it's very telling when you look at some of the things we've seen with funding and stuff over the past couple of weeks, that clearly success equals more money. Like the hockey team, deservedly so, got a good dividend from Sport Ireland over the past couple of weeks after their unbelievable success in London at the World Cup. do you feel that you need to achieve something on that level for the recognition and then the funding, which will make your life easier to come? Kind of a catch-22 situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, so the better our results get, the more exposure we get, the higher profile we are. So we won't become, we're even as much in racing as we are in Irish sport, we're an underdog. That we are a minority sport. So the better our results get and the better our exposure gets, the more likely we'll be able to get that funding.
And how's it going for you personally on a funding level? Are you funding your own trip to Spain, for example, or is there a Sport Ireland fund or Canoe Ireland fund there that'll help you out?
There is some high performance money come to Canoeing Ireland, but it's tied up in carding, and I'm not carded yet, so I'm entirely self-funded effectively, which is mainly off the back of DIT with my scholarship there, which has been, if you'll excuse the pun, it's kept me afloat for the last few years. So that's what I'm living off at the moment.
So getting carded, can that happen before the Olympics?
Yeah, absolutely. That's entirely just dependent on your results, and my results just haven't been there yet.
It's a year-by-year basis, so ultimately, at this moment in time, you don't know if you're going to be paying a lot out of your own pocket to go to Tokyo or not. If you make it to Tokyo, that is.
Yeah,
that's an incredible situation to be in. It's quite unique.
Yeah, it's
you're unsure of if you'll be able to logistically go there if you make it, but presumably if you did qualify, you would get carded, you know.
Yeah, I think the carding standard is of a similar standard to where you'd have to be for qualification.
Okay.
But if I qualify and I was somehow outside of carding, I mean, I'd sell my parents' house from under them so I could go. So I'm not. And then with the profile and the exposure that would come from the qualification, I'd hopefully get more sponsors on board as well.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned sponsors there. There's one very unique sponsor that I saw you had, some art gallery down the country.
The Chimera Gallery in Mullingar, which is run by Dave O'Shea, which was the strangest situation for getting a sponsor I've ever had. I was coming back from a World Cup in 2016 through Dublin Airport. I'm walking through with a 3.5 metre racing boat because I fly it everywhere, and I just hear a voice like, "Oh, is that Sam Curtis?" And I was like, I mean, minority sport, I'm not used to being recognised by anyone other than my own parents, and that's not always for sure. And I was like, I just kind of went over and had a chat to him and saying, "Oh yeah, I follow your stuff on social media, and I'm interested in sponsoring a minority sport." And I'd be like, I was just trying to stay calm, be like, this, just play it cool. And it's like, yeah, that'd be fantastic. And so that's my only sponsor at the moment, but it's a massive help, even that. So if someone would offer me €50 as a sponsorship, I'd take that.
That's incredible. That story like that, and I presume he's a big canoeing fan.
Not massively. He comes from a sporting background himself, and I think he was involved in various minority sports. So he's very appreciative of what we have to go through in a minority sport, and he's just through me keeping him updated. He's just kind of aware of my progress and aware of the fact that I'm hoping to get to the Olympics. So he just wants to support it, which I'm massively appreciative for.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, it's that added profile that might come from a very good finish, say, in Spain in a few weeks, perhaps, because that, even just to think of kind of a comparative situation, not in terms of the sport, but in terms of the situation the sport finds itself in. When you mentioned the numerous World Cup events, I think of the situation that the modern pentathletes are in, and we wouldn't have kind of spoken about them a lot since Rio. But this summer, people were talking about them because they did really well. They medalled in the World Cup events. So it's not just about the Olympics for you. I mean, in a couple of weeks' time, if Spain goes really well, it's something where it could put you on the map a little bit, and maybe another sponsor. Who knows? But again, it seems that it's all out of the blue to a certain extent.
Oh, since I've kind of been old enough to have the cop on to try, I've been trying to contact companies and sponsors, but it's so difficult to even just get contact. So,
and you're doing that yourself?
Yeah, that's entirely off my own back as well. But luckily, I have some experience in kind of graphic design, so all my stuff looks good, but it's just to get the contacts, and it was just coincidentally bumping into the right person at the right time.
Sure. We got the breakdown this week of how that $1.5 million is going to go from Shane Ross, because he made that statement at the airport, and the hockey team, as I say, getting $500,000 there, and it goes through a number of minority sports, as you say, but Canoeing Ireland didn't get any.
Not as far as I'm aware, but again,
does that surprise you?
Not particularly. That again, it is unfortunately it's results dependent, and we're on the rise at the moment. So our results are getting there, but they're not there yet. So we're hoping that through kind of the fact that how well we're developing and how fast we're progressing, will encourage a bit of that funding. But unfortunately, it's very tight to results.
And facilities-wise, it strikes me that the funding the athletes is important, but it seems that for a legacy that there will need to be facilities funded as well, because you mentioned the artificial tracks there. Do we have enough in Ireland to have a generation of canoeists who can keep growing and growing and growing?
It's a difficult one, because myself, and I know some of the guys I train with, we have a mentality of, I want to prove that we can compete with the international guys from Ireland. We want to prove that you can still do it from Ireland, but it would be so much easier if we had the artificial course, which there are loose plans to do it. But even if we just had that little bit more funding to make it easier for us to travel to the UK or to continental Europe to train in the courses, would be a game changer.
When you say loose plans, what are the loose plans?
There's a contract up for tender for a whitewater course down at the IFSC, as far as I know, which is, so we're cautiously optimistic, but we don't want to. I won't believe it until I'm standing in front of it looking at it.
That would be amazing.
That would again, it would be a game changer.
They would just cordon off a bit of the water from the Liffey or something, or presumably, I don't know what they would do in that situation. It seems like an odd place to put in any sort of sporting facility.
It is, but if you look at the artificial course in Cardiff, it doesn't take up a massive footprint because they can build it as they want, so it doubles back on itself quite a bit. And most of the courses are artificially pumped as well. So once they just have a reservoir or a basin of water, they can just pump water to the top of the course. It'll flow down, and you have a whitewater course.
But that would be unreal. I mean, that would certainly, if you talk about a potential participation sport, if there's a course like that right in the city centre, right down at the IFSC, then talk about it, not even inspiring a new generation, but actually enabling a new generation, which is almost more important. Talk to us a little bit about DIT. You mentioned them there. You're on a scholarship. You've finished your degree, but you're doing your master's at the moment.
Yeah, I'm ideally just finishing up my master's at the moment. I'm doing my dissertation, but I've been with DIT since 2015, I think, for a long time, because as soon as I went into DIT, I was on my scholarship, and I'd gone from zero support to getting as much support as I could wish for at that time. And my results have improved year on year because of the support I've had, because I've been well funded and well supported through DIT.
What did you study in your undergrad?
My undergrad was product design.
Okay.
And then I went to a master's in strategic management because I was not a fan of product design, so I wanted to do just a master's in just something else. I did not want to work in design, so I said I'd do something in management because it just broadens my horizons. I can go and work elsewhere.
Right. Okay. And what are you doing your dissertation on, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm doing my dissertation on knowledge transfer in coaching. So I'm trying to just bring sports into it as much as I can, because that's what my passion is. I'm not that passionate about management, but I'm passionate about sport, so I'm trying to just tie the two together.
And with all that expertise you've gained in that area from your masters, how would you evaluate Eoin Reinish's job in that management perspective?
Oh, it depends on if he's going to see it or not. Oh no, Eoin, it was a strange start for me, because the first year he was coaching us, he was also still competing, and I was also in the senior team, so at one race he'd be a teammate, and then another race he'd be my coach. But Eoin is very, very good, because as I've researched knowledge transfer, I've realised how much Owen's coaching really, really draws from actual scientific evidence of things, of the coaching relationship, rather than just him prescribing technique and just do it this way. It's just, do you think you should do it this way? If you should, here's how to do it. And just facilitating me to develop rather than just instructing me.
Right, okay, that sounds really positive. Sam, very best of luck with everything over the next couple of weeks. It's a big few weeks for you going over to Spain, but also over the next year. If we're not chatting to you before then, very best of luck. World Championships, whenabouts next year are they on?
It'll be September again.
Next September, so
that's game time.
It's going to be great. And how much time do you expect to spend in Spain?
As much as I can. So next year I'll hopefully still be in DIT, but doing a low intensity course, so I'm just going to get over there as much as I can.
And we'll catch up on Skype many a time, hopefully. Perfect. Before the World Championships. Sam Curtis, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.